Bismillah wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in wa ba'd. This is the third lesson from Bulugh Al-Maram. Inshallah, today we'll continue from where we stopped off yesterday, from Bab al-Miyah, from Kitab al-Tahara. One thing that I did not mention yesterday was as far as the word kitab is concerned. Kitab, of course, it comes from the word kataba, which actually means in the Arabic language jama', and to compile, to bring together, to. So the reason why we call it kitaba, as the ulama have explained, is because أنت تجمع الحروف والكلمات والجمل. You compile them to make sentences and words, which ends up becoming kitab, which is a book, which is something that's compiled. It's a compilation of words and sentences and letters. So this is the word kitab. So kitab, now we understand it as book, but the actual or original meaning of it and في لغة العرب is a jama'. All right, and al-bab is a madkhal. Madkhala ila أي شيء. So like if you have a madkhala ila al-ghurfa, it's called bab al-ghurfa. If you have a madkhala ila al-bayt, then it's called bab al-bayt. All right, and so on and so forth. So madkhala, but here because we're going into different masail, different issues. So the bab right now, because the masala, the issues that we're dealing with now are the issues of water. So the bab al-miyah. So this is the madkhal ila fahm al-masail al-miyah. المسائل التي تدور حول المياه. Okay, so this is what bab means. So here it's an entrance. In the English language, you can translate it as an entrance into something. So we're entering into the issues that are dealing with water. Okay. So yesterday we took the hadith of Abi Hurairah radiallahu anhu, and inshallah today we start with the second hadith, which is an Abi Sa'id al-Khudri, and which now I'll read it in Arabic first. He said, when Abi Sa'id al-Khudri radiallahu anhu قال Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam إن الماء طهور لا ينجسه شيء أخرجه الثلاثة وصححه أحمد. And this of course is in the Musnad. So he said, when Abi Sa'id al-Khudri radiallahu anhu قال, he said that the Prophet ﷺ said, إن الماء طهور. He said that verily the water is pure. And we talked about the meaning of tahur yesterday. Tahur, it means that it is طاهر بذاته ومطهر لغيره. It means that the nature of it in itself is pure, and it purifies other than itself. It's a purifier. So it can purify the body, or it can purify the clothes from any types of impurities. So tahurun la yunajjisuhu shay, that nothing can impurify, that can cause any impurities to water. Now what I'm gonna do today is I'm gonna go through the second hadith and the third hadith, because the third hadith, which is actually two hadiths in the third hadith, so it's really the third and the fourth, because they're connected together. Because the first one is mutlaq, and the two hadiths that come after it are muqayyid. And for the people that did not study usul al-fiqh, mutlaq, it means that, like, for example, kul ma shit, if you just tell a person, eat what you want. And this is a mutlaq, and it means that he can eat anything. But if muqayyid, it means that now you're putting restrictions onto something. So mutlaq, it means that it's like complete freedom. It's completely open. So if I say speak to whoever you want, this will be like mutlaq. This will be called mutlaq in Lughat al-Arabiyyah, because I didn't put any type of stipulations. But if I say, like, for example, eat anything you want except for cheese, for example, now this is muqayyid, because now there's a stipulation. So if you notice, or for example, in the speak to whoever you want except for this person, don't speak to him. Okay, then this becomes muqayyid. Muqayyid. It means now there's restrictions, or there's stipulations, conditions onto it. Because quyud is like that, it's conditions. Conditions, okay? So here it says, so in this hadith, we said, the Prophet ﷺ said, إن الماء طهور لا ينجسه شيء. That nothing can cause any impurities to it. You can call it to become impure. Cause it to become impure. This hadith is mutlaq. The hadith that comes after it will be the muqayyid. It will give the exception. Okay. Now this hadith is sahih. All right. It says akhrajahu al-thalatha. The thalatha that is mentioned here are Sunan Abi Dawood, wa Nasa'i, wa Tirmidhi. These are the three books of the Sunan that it was mentioned in. So if he says akhrajahu thalatha, then he means those three without Ibn Majah. وصححه أحمد. Ahmed fil Musnad, he graded the hadith as being authentic, sahih. And the truth is that the hadith is sahih لشواهده. There are some issues with the hadith, but because it has different shawahid from different ahadith that are thabita, so the hadith is accepted as being sahih, but it's this hadith in itself is actually not authentic. But because of the different shawahid, and Shaykh Albani, Allah yarhamu, he compiled a different chains of narration of the hadith and with all the shawahid from different hadith. So that's what makes it sahih. But this hadith in itself is not actually sahih by itself. Okay, so it's sahih bi shawahidihi. Okay, with all the shawahid, it means that the wording of this hadith, you find it in other hadith that are authentic. So that means that the hadith has shawahid. So that means that you can go back and you say, okay, that this statement of the Prophet ﷺ is thabit. It's affirmed, as I guess you could say, in different ahadith. So there is a big possibility that this hadith, even though the sanad is not authentic, that it is correct because this wording has been said in other ahadith that are authentic. So that's what's meant by bishawahidihi. The next hadith, which is an Abi Umama الباهلي رضي الله عنه قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إن الماء لا ينجسه شيء إلا ما غلب على ريحه وطعمه ولونه أخرجه ابن ماجه وضعفه أبو حاتم. Now this hadith is ضعيف, and then the second part of the hadith وللبيهقي الماء طاهر إلا أن تغير ريحه أو طعمه أو لونه بنجاسة تحدث فيه. So to go back to the first part, the hadith is reported on Abi Umama al-Bahili radiyallahu anhu, and he said that the Prophet ﷺ said that water, verily the water la yunajjisuhu shay, nothing can cause it to become impure. Illa, now this is where the muqayyid comes in. So the first hadith was mutlaq, and then now we have the qayd, which is now it becomes muqayyid. Illa ma ghalaba ala rihihi wa ta'amihi wa lawnihi, except for anything that has changed the smell or the taste or the color of the water. Because we know, for example, now this comes in the next hadith, the next one, because here, if we just took the hadith of Abi Umama, what we're going to understand is that anything that changes the smell, the taste, or the color of water, now once that has changed, it becomes najasa, and it's not permissible to be used because now the najasa in the water has overtaken it, overpowered it. But we didn't understand the najasa from this hadith. He said anything that changes the smell, the taste, or the color. So what about if soap, a bar of soap fell in the water? Would that not have an effect on the smell of the water? Okay. What about if some leaves, like some tea leaves, were to fall in the water? Well, you know that you put a bucket down of water to make wudu, and some leaves fell in the water, and it's a very hot day. Would that not change the color of the water? And even it might even change a bit of the smell of the water. So this issue now is about, number one, the overpowering. And it's not just the taghayyur, because the taghayyur, it means the changing. But what you see in the next hadith of the other left of the hadith, which is also an Abi Umama, in Bayhaqi, al-ma'u tahirun illa an taghayyara rihuhu aw ta'amuhu aw lawnuhu bi najasatin tahduthu fihi. So now we understand from the second part of the hadith that's in Bayhaqi that this has to be from najasa that has overpowered the taste or the smell or the color of the water. Now, if a little bit of, like, for example, tea leaves or something like a bar of soap falls into the water and you pull the bar of soap out, so it hasn't stayed in long enough to actually change the whole composition of the water. So the water is still tahur, and you can still use it for wudu. But as long as, like I said, it hasn't stayed in long enough for the composition of the water to change to where that smell or the color has become now overpowered, like where it overpowers the actual water, where now the water becomes completely like soapy water. And in this point now, it's no longer permissible to use because it's no longer mutahhir. It's tahir, but it's not mutahhir. So it's not tahur. So in this case, we don't use it for, we could use it for washing dishes, and we could use it for other things like cleaning, but we can't use it for any type of purification because now it's become soapy water, basically, completely soapy water. But if like a few leaves of a tree fall in and change a little bit of the water, either the color of the water, maybe because it's a very hot day, maybe the water's hot, like here in like right now I'm in Saudi Arabia. In the summertime, the water is very, very hot. It's very, very hot. It's steaming hot. So if a leaf were to fall into the water, it would almost start to cook. So you start to see a slight change in the water. But as long as that doesn't overpower the whole composition of the water to where it becomes like tea, for example, it's still considered tahur. Tahur in the fact that you can use it for purification. But now if it's najasa, and we have a bucket of water and a few drops of urine, for whatever reason, maybe from a child or something like that, fell into the bucket, dropped into the bucket of water, and it hasn't overpowered the smell of the water, then the water is still tahur, because it still has the smell of it hasn't changed the smell, because of course water, it has no smell. So once you start to smell something, then obviously now there's an issue, or the color of the water is clear, and once it becomes unclear because of najasa, and the najasa becomes too much in the water. If people kept coming and peeing in the bucket while the water's water in it, to the point where now the water is cloudy, or even taking on the smell of urine and the color of urine, then it's overpowered and it's no longer tahur. It's no longer tahir. It's not even tahir. Whereas if like soapy water is still tahir, but if the najasa has overpowered the water, then it's no longer tahir. It's not tahir and it's not mutahir. So it's complete najasa now, and then this water has to be dumped out, the bucket washed, and then you have to get fresh water to use for any type of purification, inshallah. So the first hadith from it's one hadith, all right. But the first part of the hadith came in Ibn Majah. The second part of the hadith came in Al-Bayhaqi, and both of these hadith they are the qaid, or the stipulation for the hadith that came before that of Abi Sa'id al-Khudri, in which the Prophet ﷺ said, "Al-ma'a tahur, la yunajjisuhu shay." So nothing can bring impurities to water, but here we say except something that has changed the smell, the color, or the taste of the water. Now the issue is that these two ahadith are da'if. They're not authentic, and even Hafiz ibn Hajar mentioned that in the book, in Bulugh Al-Maram. So these two hadiths are not authentic, but the action of these hadiths is authentic. And of course, this issue, even because of the hadith not being authentic, is something that Ibn al-Qayyim, he spoke about in his book I'lam al-Muwaqqi'in, in which he said, "Alladhi taqtadihi al-uqul, أن الماء إذا لم تغيره النجاسة لا ينجس فإنه باق على أصل خلقته وهو طيب فيدخل في قوله تعالى ويحل لهم الطيبات." So here Ibn al-Qayyim, he said in his book I'lam al-Muwaqqi'in, he said that this is something that is understood through the logic of the mind, is that if أن الماء إذا لم تغير النجاسة, if najasa were to go into the water, like any type of small amount of najasa, impurities were to go into the water, and it didn't change any of those three characteristics of the water, which are the taste, the smell, or the color. If it didn't change any of these three characteristics, la yanjus, the water itself does not become impure because of a little bit of that impurities falling in the water. فإنه باق على أصل خلقته, and then it continues, it stays on the foundation of its how it was created, of its origins, which is its tahur, tahuratuhu, وهو طيب, and it's good, وطيب. فيدخل في قوله تعالى ويحل لهم الطيبات, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made the tayyibat, the good things, permissible for us. And then this is the understanding of the ulama, that once the najasa, once the impurities become too much in the water, to the point where those three characteristics of the water change, then as we know, it's no longer tayyib, it's no longer good, it's not from the purities. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's made the tayyibat halal lana, they're good for us, and these are the things that we should use, and these are what we use in the purification, because how we're purifying ourselves to pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is the understanding of the ulama, even though the hadith is da'if, even though these two hadiths with the stipulation of these three awsaf, but this is known from tatabbu' wal-istiqra', and just from logic, if you just look at the water itself and how it becomes how the smell changes its form, and how the composition of the water changes because of something overpowering it, whether it be from najasa, from impurities, or whether it be from something else, to the point where it becomes known as juice or known as tea, to where it no longer now is tahur. It's tahir if it becomes like that, but if the impurities have overpowered it, then it's no longer pure at all. It's no longer tahir. It now becomes a najis. So at this point, it's not permissible to use for anything because it's impure completely. Wallahu alam. وإلى هنا سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.